All right, so think about this for a second. You're walking down the street, right? Maybe downtown. And you're just surrounded by ads everywhere you look. Billboards, those posters at the bus stop, maybe even like a giant inflatable thing for, I don't know, some new phone or something.
Or even that gorilla, remember that?
Oh, yeah, the gorilla. We see this stuff every single day, but do we ever really think about the people who actually get those ads up there? So get ready to go behind the scenes because today we're doing a deep dive on advertising installers. And we've got some seriously in-depth info from RoleCatcher. It's a website all about helping people understand different careers.
And you're right to say in depth because RoleCatcher goes way beyond just like a basic job description. It's actually kind of surprising, the mix of skills they say you need for this job. They talk about customer service, construction, even a little bit of like artistic vision.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen customer service and building construction in the same job description before. But I guess when you think about it for advertising installer, it does make sense. Like you got to understand what the client wants, but you also have to know how to actually install it, safely and all that.
For sure. Imagine trying to put one of those huge vinyl wraps on a skyscraper, right? You've got to know the brand guidelines, how to use all the equipment, how to work at those heights, make sure it's perfectly lined up, make sure it can handle the weather. It's a lot.
Definitely not your average put up a poster kind of gig.
No, not at all.
Speaking of which, RoleCatcher has these example profiles that really show you what I mean. They've created these fictional but super realistic examples of what an advertising installer's career might look like at different stages. It really highlights how important it is to be adaptable and a good problem solver in this line of work.
Yeah, it's not just about the job itself, but how that job can actually change as you get more experience and take on more responsibility.
Right. So you might start as a trainee, just learning the basics, helping out the more experienced installers, maybe even doing some smaller projects to get comfortable using the climbing equipment.
Right.
But then as you become a junior installer, you get more independence. You're managing your own installations, maybe even working as part of a team on some bigger, more complicated projects.
And that's where they talk about learning to use all the specific tools and materials. Like a junior installer might need to become an expert in different types of adhesives or learn how to use a boom lift for those really high installations, even mastering things like applying vehicle wraps, which is way harder than it looks, by the way.
And I bet those technical skills, they get even more important as you move up, right? RoleCatcher talks about senior advertising installers. They're the ones leading those super complex projects. So not only are they doing the work, but they're also mentoring the newer installers, managing the money, staying on schedule, all of that.
Exactly. And that's where all those different skills, the customer service, the construction stuff, even the artistic side, it all comes together. Picture this. You're a senior installer, and you're in charge of putting a giant wrap on a whole building, like several stories high. You're not just up there with the ropes and the vinyl anymore, you're leading a whole team. And you've got to be able to handle problems quickly, make sure everything looks amazing, and of course, stay within the budget. No pressure, right?
That sounds like a wild ride. But also, you're learning new things all the time, even as you move up to those higher positions. And speaking of moving up, RoleCatcher actually talks about a couple more levels, ones that are less about actually doing the installation and more about like the leadership and management side of things.
Totally. So you might work your way up to an advertising installation supervisor, and that's where their profile for that really comes in handy. You're still super involved in the world of installation, but now you're the one in charge of the teams, the materials, making sure everything gets finished on time and within budget. Big responsibility.
So, less hands-on, more like the boss of the operation.
Pretty much. Think of it this way. A good supervisor, they can spot a problem before it even happens. They know all the little things that can go wrong, whether it's the permits, the weather, even weird stuff with the building itself. They've seen it all. And they use that experience to keep the whole project moving smoothly.
Okay, so you're like the problem solver in chief at that point, which I guess leads us to the top of the mountain, advertising installation manager.
You got it. RoleCatcher describes this as a high-level position, very strategic. They're running the whole installation department, building relationships with clients, even deciding what direction the company's going to go with its installation services. They're not just thinking about tomorrow's job, they're thinking about what the whole industry is going to look like in a few years.
That's pretty impressive.
Right.
But, it makes you wonder, with all the digital ads we see these days, is there even a future for, like, physical installations? Will those giant billboards and building wraps just become a thing of the past?
It's a good question, and honestly, it's something RoleCatcher brings up too. Digital advertising is huge, for sure, but I don't think we're ready to throw in the towel on physical installations just yet. I mean, think about it. They're right there in front of you, impossible to ignore. Digital ads, you can just scroll past them. Plus, those big installations, they can get people talking on social media, and they're really good for reaching a specific group of people in a specific area.
So it's like they have a different kind of impact. And RoleCatcher actually suggests that even though some parts of the job might be done by machines eventually, those human skills, like being creative, solving problems, being open to new tech, those are only going to become more valuable, right?
100%. And that's where everything we've talked about comes back around. Understanding what the client wants, thinking on your feet, being willing to learn new things. Like, take those giant LED screens they have on buildings now or at concerts. Installing and taking care of those, that's a whole other level of technical know-how.
It's like a mix of like old school craftsmanship and super high-tech stuff.
Yeah, it's wild. And that's what's so cool about this whole deep dive, right? It's not just about like putting up a sign. It's about the strategy, the tech, figuring out how to get people's attention when there's already so much to look at.
It's like they took the old school idea of a billboard and said, hey, let's throw in some high-tech displays, use some crazy materials, and find the perfect spot. Like, we're going to blow people's minds.
Right. And let's not forget about those people skills, as they say. RoleCatcher really makes a point of saying how important customer service is no matter where you are in your career. Being good with your hands isn't enough. You got to be able to communicate clearly, solve problems on the fly, and really get what the client is going for.
Totally. It's almost like advertising installers are like brand ambassadors.
Hmm.
They take that client's vision and turn it into something real, something you can actually see and experience. And these days, with everyone getting hit with a million ads every day, it's that human element, that attention to detail that can really make a difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, to everyone listening, what's the biggest thing you're taking away from this deep dive? What surprised you the most about this whole world of advertising installation? Was it the mix of physical work and like creative thinking? Maybe realizing that those crazy ads we see all the time, they don't just magically appear. There's a whole team of skilled people behind them putting in the work. Whatever it is, I hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for just how much goes into creating the ads that honestly kind of shape how we see the world. And it makes you think, in a world that's becoming more and more about data and algorithms, will those uniquely human skills, being able to understand someone's vision, roll with the punches, turn an idea into reality, will those become even more important in the future of advertising?